Hey team, Katie here from Equestrian Movement. I'm going to do a little training today on to click a train or not click a train. So at Equestrian Movement, we primarily don't click a train, mostly because I find the clicker awkward and I feel that vocals are just as effective. One of the reasons why clicker train might be appropriate is that it's really good for helping you as the trainer and handler of your horse to clearly mark the behaviors you want. And so this is really the key to training after we have emotional self-regulation. So when you hear me teaching, you'll hear me say a lot, the cue training part is really easy. The hard part is the emotional regulation, self-regulation, but the key to getting the cue training really easy is being able to clearly identify and reward the behaviors you want, both through the release of pressure, so negative reinforcement, and the application of positive reinforcement. So whether you choose your positive reinforcement to be pats, treats, changing the exercise, vocal cues, praise, is going to be completely dependent on you and your relationship with your horse. And you might find that these change over time as well. You might find that, starting out, you're going to use some treats because you don't have a whole lot of relationship established. And so it's getting that willingness for you. Or you might find that starting out you don't use any treats because they're getting overstimulated and they don't have any emotional self-regulation yet, and praise is working better because they're more focused in their job and able to manage their behavior a lot better that way. So that's where I sit on clicker training. So situations where clicker training has been really appropriate. One of my students has a horse that has been ridden poorly, incredibly poorly, from a young age and is really sore through his whole body. And so when they were trying to pick his legs up to pick his hooves, he would try to kick. So clicker training basically fixed that, within a couple of sessions, because he had control over lifting his leg up. So the theory, there is no way of actually, testing the hormone levels in the horses, but what the clicker training should be doing is releasing dopamine. So dopamine is the happy hormone for task achievement, and initially they get it for the treats. After a period of time, they actually get that hormone release from the clicker, from marking the behavior. So they start to look for that dopamine hit and start looking for the behaviors that we're looking for. And that's, kind of how we're trying to guide this willingness and engagement in the exercise out of them. So there's also a spectrum of horses that this works really well on to what it doesn't work really well on. But I'm going to start with just the behaviors that have worked really well. So my particular student with this horse, she's been working with him and she's actually a clicker trainer for dogs, and so she has been doing it with the horses. So this horse in particular has been really responsive. He also doesn't get overstimulated in his behavior with regards to mugging and being in your personal space. He actually has quite a big wall up between his humans, and I think that has a lot to do with his previous handling. So it's done really well to bring that wall down and help him integrate with the herd and the family a lot better. It has helped manage his aggressive behaviors because the aggressive behaviors were related to pain. And then it has also helped with exercising him, because movement is medicine. But because he was in pain, forcing movement and high pressure exercises aren't a good kind of fit for him at this stage, because moving is still causing him pain, and so he doesn't have incentive to move. By the time we're doing our training under saddle, we want movement to feel good, which is why they're working with us. But this horse in particular, not the one in this video at the moment, but this horse that I'm talking about, still very tight with all of his muscles. She's been working with vets, chiros, body workers, acupuncturists, hoof podiatrists, you name it, she's working with them. She's trying to get him sound and fit and healthy, but he's just had a really rough start to it and been worked too hard too young. And so the clicker training is helping with marking the behaviors for exercising rather than using too much pressure work from the whip and from riding and whatnot. So she's been able to teach him to go on the lunge in long and low by clicking for when his head is low and marking that. So now he works really sweetly with his head down low. And also for forwardness, she's started off by clicking for, that responsivity to leg pressure. So he is definitely a case for where it has worked incredibly well and been of benefit to both the owners and the horse. Same person has her own horse, which is a cob, who's not really had any problems with starting, is very muggy and is very food orientated, and so she can't use a lot of clicker training with him because he just gets overstimulated by it. So it has absolutely nothing to do with the handler and everything to do with the person, with the horse, and if it's the right kind of interaction for them and whatnot. So another time that I've used this is with Gunner, our big 17-hand Australian draft horse. With these big heavy horses, we don't really want to get into an argument of who's stronger, because Gunner will always be stronger. So because I don't use the clicker, I still use positive reinforcement. I mark with the word yes if I want repetitions of the behavior, and good if I'm happy with it and I'm going to treat them for it. So I have cued in Gunner's halt rein back with treats, because I didn't want to get into an argument of trying to pull him into the halt. And you can do a one rein halt to get into a halt, so that they're not pulling, so that you're not having to get pull with two reins, but then communicating the rein back. So he does a really nice rein back now without the treat and without rein contact, just by coming to the halt and taking your legs back and asking for the rein back. And so as a result, it also improves the quality of the halt. So if we cue train into them that slight bit pressure, or even just rocking into your seat is halt rein back, then we have breaks, which is ideally what we want under saddle. So one of the other things that I've been working on him with is he has been bucking into canter, and when you try to ride the trot forward. So I have been marking him going into the trot transition without resistance, and then doing a trot on within the trot without resistance with treats. And then on the ground, I've been doing trot canter transitions, free lunging him, and marking the canter transition as well. So we can use it to just get that enthusiasm and that willingness towards the cue training of our forward buttons and our stop buttons, and even our turn buttons, if you wanted to do it that way as well. So with the schoolies, Phoenix gets overstimulated by treats, so I use it rarely. A lot of the times the groundwork that the kids are doing is pressure-based and boundaries, because of Phoenix and his boundary issues. He is definitely looking at being kind of in our aggressive quadrant, and also a little bit in our spooky quadrant and our shut down quadrant. So he's just a little bit all over the place, but he definitely does try to be in charge if he can. So if the kids do too much treat training with him, he does start biting and trying to push them around and push back into them. So we don't do a lot with it. I do use it with all of my beginners on the lunge, because I feel like the effort that they put into looking after these kids is requiring of high value reward. But I do alternate. Like if I feel he's getting overstimulated by treats, he'll have some sessions with the beginners without treats, and then when I feel that he's losing interest and engagement, then I'll start using the treats again. So he's one that you kind of use and you don't use it with. Angel, I use a lot of treat training with her because she is kind of similar to Gunner in that she's a heavier horse and she lacks forwardness. So I treat for anytime she is responding correctly to the leg aid and they're maintaining forward. All of the schoolies, I've done the halt rein back with the treat training just so that I can cue it into the leg for back instead of rein pressure. That way I use, because rein back is so critical to getting the horses to engage and use their hindquarters, I do it a lot with the kids and when I'm riding. So having it cued in softly means that I'm not teaching them to pull. So basically I'm teaching them that their hands just say don't go, and then you get your seat and your legs right and your legs say walk backwards. And so the horses will lightly do their rein back as part of their warm-up and their training for the day, even with the beginners that are still coordinating their aids. So treat training has been good for Fiddy, but it would be easy to tip him over with it. He's definitely in that aggressive quadrant. So when we're looking at horses in this quadrant, when we start rewarding for tasks and task achievement and they get that dopamine release, the withholding of the treat works as like the opposite effect of building frustration, and that frustration can lead to aggression and what am I talking about? So the frustration can lead to them getting angry and resentful and kind of taking it out on you because you're the one that's withholding the treat, and that's what leads to the aggression. So being very aware of your horse's temperament and how they interact with it is important. Zodi is one that treat training is very effective for. So if we remember that he is insecurely unattached, so he's not attached to me in his relationship and he's really insecure within himself, using the treat as the bridge for that conversation and that connection really helped to build that trust in me so that he could open up to me. And using treats was the first way that I catch spooky horses that are scared of people. So I put their feet out and then see how close to me they get. When they stop, I walk away. And so over time I'm building up so that they come closer to me before I walk away, until I get to the point of where they will fist bump me before they get their dinner and before I walk away. So they are learning that they can control me and make me go away by approaching me, and so that builds confidence in like consequences of their behavior. If they come closer to me, then I go away from them, which is what they want because they're scared of people. And then over time it builds confidence with how close to that person they're going to get. until they're ready to actually touch you. And so that's in our seeking connection stages, particularly with our insecurely unattached horses. So we'll have a look at some of the horses. Oh, that's the other thing that I was going to say. Clicker training or positive reinforcement, or, well, not positive reinforcement, because we can still use praise, vocals and whatnot in positive reinforcement. But treat training, I feel, is you want to be careful with it until your horse understands how to self-regulate emotionally. What the treat training does is it brings their energy up, and so that energy coming up is what engages them in the exercises and creates willingness and gets that kind of enthusiasm where they're on board with what we want. But the thing about horses is that they're very big animals, and so ideally we're trying not to overexcite them or overstimulate them or them have too much energy about them. So the first step is going to be emotional self-regulation, and it may mean that you need to do protected contact if you need to engage them in that relationship with you through treats first. So just being mindful of what your horse's personality is and how they interact with their treats is key, is vital there. So we teach emotional self-regulation first through getting our horses into that state of relaxation, getting them to start looking for a connection and a relationship with us, getting them seeking that connection by the fist bump and then the licking. And so then they can start self-soothing through the licking. You might also find that your horses that are typically mouthy will chew things when they're stressed and they're trying to self-soothe. So if you've got like a ball that they chew on or the whip or something like that, they'll chew on that when they're stressed to try and self-regulate emotionally. So basically treats make it more difficult for our horses to manage themselves emotionally, and a horse that can't control its emotions can't control its behavior. And so this is where treats become a problem, and that is how I choose whether I go into a training session with a horse I don't know with treats or not. So this is Senny. Senny is on the shutdown side, and so he also doesn't understand how to seek the release of pressure. So he also doesn't really know kind of like what to do with what's happening to him. So treat training and actually even just our connection training can end up with him getting overstimulated and not controlling his behavior. So you can see like he gets frustrated here with, he puts his ears back when he doesn't get the answer right. So, I forgot what I was saying. So with our horses that get overstimulated by the treats, we need to teach them to not frisk us, and we need to teach them boundaries and not to come into our boundaries, but also at the crux of it, we're teaching them emotional self-regulation. So we want them engaged, willing and consenting without being overstimulated and unable to control themselves. So this is kind of like the flip side of negative reinforcement, right? Is negative reinforcement can escalate our horses into heightened states because they can't find the answer and they're stressed. Positive reinforcement has the same effect because by withholding the treat, they're also not finding the correct answer. So to bring the two together, we're really looking for emotional self-regulation and being able to get into that relaxed state. So we ask our horses to not frisk us by asking them to look away when they are frisking us and they get the treat for looking away. So Sunny was being a little bit cheeky there and not looking in the direction that I was pointing to. So you kind of have to make your call there if you're going to reward or not. So remembering not to become too involved with your ego. You don't want, like, he's looked away. So I rewarded him with a pat rather than a treat to say thank you for looking away and stopping mugging me. So you just have to kind of like figure out where you're going to draw that line for yourself. So Sunny actually also gets the same level of overstimulation from just like pats and just spending time with Maddie, who was handling him at the time. So he was just like getting excited about that physical contact and that emotional connection. So even that in itself can be overstimulating, and what we're looking for is just helping them to manage themselves emotionally. So you can see how treat training can get them super like engaged and with you. But we still need to be able to get them to relax as well. Generally with our geldings, we can see when they start to get overstimulated because they get their doodles out. And it's generally once the doodles get hardened. So Fiddy will relax his out when he's giving me relaxation cues. So I'm happy for them to have it out as long as it's flopping around. It's just when it starts to get hard that they're getting overstimulated. So this is also where Sunny is starting to learn a little bit of self-regulation, is where he just... Did I take that back or forward? I think I took it back. I think I took it too far back. So Sunny is starting to develop a little bit of self-regulation there, where he like closes his eyes and he calms himself. So we want to extend on those periods of time, and our cue for that is stand with relaxation. But you can see then he still is frustrated by getting asked to do things. So you can see it in the way that his ears are tight and tense. And we can see also that he's now overstimulated by treats as well, if we look between his legs. Let's go to the next horse. It is always hard also when we're getting to know a new horse and getting to know like where their level of stimulation and emotional self-regulation is, because we can miss a lot of cues in the outset, and we have to do like a lot of reviewing how our training session went and then going back in with a different idea and a different plan. So this is April. She is super sensitive and on the really insecure end of the spectrum, but she really wants to please. She's a people pleaser. This is actually my kind of horse. These are my favorite horses. The last time that I had her in with the saddle before, so the first time I handled her, which was the session before this one, I brought the tack out and she was shaking in fear. So this was a situation where treat training is appropriate. So I started introducing consent to the saddle and the saddle cloth, so that we could show her that she's in control of the experience and get her to consent the tack being put on her. So initially we ask her to touch the... She's trying to nudge the tree down in my hand. We ask her to touch the saddle cloth and she gets a treat. This is also another horse that hasn't learned emotional self-regulation. She like overthinks everything and is super sensitive in that response, and gets her knickers in a twist trying to be a good girl and find the right answers. So the treat training can give her a lot more confidence in herself, and there's a huge difference between the training session before this, where she was shaking in fear from having the gear on, to introducing it with treats for her to target and consent it, has given her so much more confidence in the whole process. So this is a horse that I played with and was one of those scenarios where I knew I just wasn't going to be using treats with her until we had some kind of relationship formed. You can kind of, once you pick it, you can get the vibe from the horse before you go in whether treats are appropriate or not. Typically speaking, I find that horses that are confident in themselves, you don't want to start with treats. There's always, obviously, it's not a hard fast and rule. You can kind of work with it, but you don't want to use treats if your horse isn't able to manage themselves emotionally yet. And you don't want to use treats if your horse is confident in lashing out at you, because not only is the horse that's confident enough in itself to lash out at you the same spectrum of behavior. So the horse that's confident in itself is in that aggressive tendencies, and so they not only are happy to tell you go away if they feel threatened by you, but they're also the same horses that escalate into frustration to aggression quickly when they don't get the answer, or so they don't get what they want, which is the treat. So understanding that when we do have that horse in that quadrant, once we kind of have some kind of connection and boundaries established, whether that be with protected contact or if we've just got like them, building that rapport with us in other ways, the treats definitely help in managing their frustration with being told what to do. So when we look at that conversation between Esme and I, where we got all of those no's there from pressure, that is her personality type, compared to, say, like April, who is really like, yes, how can I please you? Yes, how can I please you? Yes, how can I please you? Esme is more like, no, you can go away. I don't want to do anything you ask me to do. So it's not, some of these things can be trained into it, but what is their personality type before their life experiences, they all kind of sit in this spectrum of how they're going to respond to their training, and how they respond to positive reinforcement, and then how they respond to negative reinforcement. So I 100% could get more willingness out of Esme right now if I was treating her, but I did not have enough of a rapport and a relationship with her to feel safe around her with treats. So it might be something that, like, I would do this kind of training session with her and then feed her, and that would be the first introduction of us using positive reinforcement, is that for the effort of her training session, she would get treats. So I hope you're sort of getting a little bit of clarity around that. It depends on the personality of the horse as to when it is appropriate to use treats. If your horse has constant access to feed, and you have them securely attached, capable of emotional self-regulation, and your treats aren't like super high value. So if we're thinking like pellets, loosened pellets, carrots, those kinds of things, they're going to get more excitement out of the horse to earn it than grass, depending on your grass. If we've got like, shedded, dried, grassy hay, then that's not, as highly motivating as carrots, apples, loosened pellets, that kind of thing. So what you're really looking for is your horse's emotional response to training in general, and then also their response to you, to help you understand what would be appropriate. So lastly, if we lose a bit of our horse's willingness and engagement in their learning and consenting in their work, we can use games that incorporate treat training, so our trick training with treats, to get them just a little bit more interested and connected and engaged in the work that we're doing with this. So that has been definitely one of the things that Fiddy and I have done a lot of in the last year of working on our relationship is, making work fun for him, because work has always been stressful. I have been stressful. He's associated me with not being happy, not enjoying the process. So to be able to ride our horses with relaxation, we need to be able to work them with relaxation. So we need mental relaxation on the ground first before we have physical relaxation under the saddle. So we've done lots of targeting with the ball, with the cones, with my fist, and then we have had to incorporate a lot of boundaries with Fiddy, and I have had to go through the process myself of actually ensuring that I am not in a working mode when I go down with him, and I'm coming in with like a softer body language, softer facial expression, like making sure that I am in that open heart experience of actively loving my horse when I go into work with him, and not in more of that like rigid, tight kind of working hard mentality that I can end up in when I'm training horses, because it's work for me. So being in that open-hearted space when I'm working with the horses can be tricky sometimes. So this is one of our liberty exercises of follow my feet, and you can see that we're really lacking the engagement in the exercise, even though I am treat training him. And this was, where's the date? No date. This was a while ago. I think it would probably be about a year and a half ago. So using treats to re-engage his interest in me. At a moment, so I've got carrots in my pocket. At the moment, the grass is more rewarding to him than how rewarding the carrot would be if he worked with me. So the carrot comes with the negative aspect of he has to work with me. So it makes the carrot less rewarding, if that makes sense. The grass is pretty good, and he doesn't have to do any work, and he doesn't have to get stressed about it to eat it. So being able to figure out where, your horse is at, like, it's a, this is what training is like, how are you emotionally engaging your horse in your training session? How are you creating willingness? How are you bringing their energy up into relaxed focus so that they can work without stress. And then also, like, how are you bringing them back down into that state of relaxation when they're, getting overstimulated, when they are getting stressed or frustrated. So for Fiddy, he would get, he definitely sits in that more aggressive quadrant where he's quite happy to tell me where to go if he's unhappy, if he feels threatened by me in any way. And basically he feels threatened by me when I'm holding whips, so lunge whips, dressage whips. He feels threatened by me if I come down into work with him in that working brain, and he feels threatened by me when I'm sending him away sometimes as well. So there's certain scenarios where he will lash out at me rather than, give the desired behavior. And so this is a circumstance where you would want to do some protected contact as well. So we spent 3 to 4 months of just developing relaxation and relaxation cues with me behind the fence line. So I would take my feed out, take his dinner out to him, send him away, put his food down, let him eat, and then I would sit on the other side of the fence until he started showing me active signs of relaxation, and then I'd take myself away. So same instance where the thing that he wanted was for me to go away because I made him feel insecure, unsafe, and threatened. So what behavior could he give me to make me go away? Well, the behavior that he could give me was showing me that he was relaxed. And so he quickly learnt then that if he showed me he was relaxed, I would go away. And so then he started being relaxed when he saw me. And so it had that kind of flow-on effect that now he shows active relaxation to anybody that comes into a paddock with him, whether it be like the vet, the farrier. And so this was Fiddy's reluctance to come down into the training paddock, was the inflatable kangaroo. And so that's why I was getting all of those no's with him. And this is our confidence through curiosity with getting him to target the things that he's scared of. And again, this shows that aggressive quadrant where he walked over to investigate that kangaroo because he decided that, well, if he's going to have to go near it, he's quite happy to take it out if he needs to. So these horses are good at being confident with things that they're scared of because they decide that, in the circumstance, they potentially are the threat. They're not actually being threatened. So they're quite happy to act aggressively towards the thing that makes them feel threatened. So that sometimes is people, that is sometimes us as their handlers, which is no fun. So that's why we had to work on getting the relaxation cues first and getting him to be relaxed when he saw me. And then that had the flow-on effects that he would show those relaxation cues for anybody else that comes down into the paddock with me. And Robin actually messaged me the other day and asked me if Fiddy and Mick had started getting along yet. And I'm happy to update you guys with Mick said to me, Fiddy actually maybe isn't that bad and he's been a lot friendlier lately. So, we're getting there. So what we're looking for, deciding whether to use treats or not, deciding what kind of reinforcer you're going to use. Everything that you do is either, moving them away from what they don't want or towards what they do want. And so it's just how you have to go into that training environment with your horse knowing clearly what you're trying to achieve. And if you can understand clearly what you're trying to achieve, then you can have a plan about how you're going to go about it. And then if that plan doesn't work, that's okay. You can reflect. But it's not the fact that your horse isn't trained appropriately or whatnot, or is a bad horse or is naughty or anything like that. It's your horse, explaining who they are, basically, how they interact with you, how they interact with the training environment, how they interact with an exercise, all is indications of who that horse is and what kind of personality they have, and you take that into the next training session of how to work with your horse better, rather than forcing them to give you what you want from them. Once we have emotional self-regulation, once they're engaged, consenting, willing, and actively participating in the exercise, then we can start asking them to do things that they may not be happy about doing. And we know how to work with that personality type because we've got there to that point by figuring out who they are. We know, the warning signs when they're not coping. We know how to re-engage them if we lose them. We know what makes them feel good, what makes them feel bad. So it's all a process of learning about who your horse is and the best way to work with them, and then we can do the tricks. But first we have to help them work through their emotions into that state of mental relaxation so that we can get them into a state of learning. Because a horse that can't control its emotions can't control its behavior, and a horse that is in a reactive mindset also cannot learn. It's a different area of their brain that's working. So love to hear if you have any questions, or if you need any support on any particular one of those topics. As always, if you're sending video in of your horse, then I can help you kind of identify certain aspects of their personality and behaviors that they're showing, so that it can help you understand how better to work with your horse. Thanks for watching. Bye.